Alrighty, we are heading into another Aetherdrift draft here. I actually did this recording a couple days ago, but accidentally did not have my microphone on. But I wanted to go back and make sure I recorded over this one because we had quite a successful little run here. I won't spoil off the top here, but we managed to do better than I had in the last few days prior to that. And so I wanted to put this one out there because it felt like it helped me get a better grasp on the format. So back one here, looking at the Debris Beetle, the Ride's End as a solid removal spell. I think Beetle or Harrier are probably the strongest cards in the pack, but Beetle's in two colors, and so I'd rather just stay open here. So I'm going to end up taking the first Spike Shell Harrier, and this ends up working out quite well for me because in the next pack I get past another one. So at this point I'm hoping that I'm going to be locking into blue. I see here there's a Flood the Engine and a River Churn Monument as well. Monument's fun win condition. I'll actually see in the video that gets released tomorrow, me making solid use of that. But I think overall the Harrier is a stronger card, and then I'll hope here that the Flood the Engine tables, and then we get past another great blue card in the Ranger's Refueler. You'll see me hover over that run over there as well. I think this is the next strongest card in the pack. Maybe there's a Grease Wrench Goblin as well at the same power level, but we're just going to stick in our colors, take the Ranger's Refueler. It's solid in the blue-black deck because it's an artifact. It's solid in blue-white for the same reason, and then obviously it's got all the exhaust payoff if we end up in blue-green. So this pack here, a little bit more underwhelming. Again, we've got the Gallant Strike as fine removal, but blue-white I've been kind of underwhelmed by so far. There's the Aether Siphon, which I found the card advantage to be quite useful, and then there's the Wreckage Wickerfolk. I end up taking the Aether Siphon here. You know, it works out for us in the end, but hindsight, maybe the Wreckage Wickerfolk is enough better and gets us in the direction that we want to be in blue-black that it's worth considering in that position. I don't think it would have necessarily paid off for us considering how the rest of the packs end up going, but that might have been a better selection in that position, or at least, open to the argument there. This pack's quite underwhelming. It feels like this is okay, what's potentially our second color here. So trying to figure out, would I rather have a Gallant Strike, be in blue-white, Feel the Flames to be in blue-red, but I don't really have the cards so far that I typically want to play in a blue-red deck. I'm looking at the Ketrodon as well. I just end up taking that. It's a solid green creature. I think blue-green is a good color combination. So happy enough with that. And then, of course, now we get past a Pact Altair pick 6. And if we're going to be in blue-black, this is the card that we want to see paired with the Spike Shell Harrier. So I am happy enough here. I'm not locked into the green just because I took the Ketrodon. I think the Mole and Surveyor are noticeably weaker than the Pact Altair if we can get the blue-black deck online. And then here, so there's an Unswerving Sloth, which I have been extremely impressed by, but I don't think it's really the card that we'd want in a blue-white shell. There's the Howler's Heavy if we just want a playable blue card. Looking at this, I don't remember what I select. It might be the Pothole Mole, but I think I probably am supposed to take the Mutant Surveyor here. It's just a very solid black card. So if I end up in blue-black and I have any Start Your Engines payoffs, I probably want a copy of that. So in hindsight, I think I probably should have taken the Mutant Surveyor instead in that pick. Here I'm looking at Caradora. Obviously, based on our early picks, I don't think we're going this direction. It's basically throwing out all of our picks this pack because Ketrodon and Mole are not great in the white-green deck. And I'm just going to take Night Market for some early fixing to get my hands on. So I think pretty happy with the first 8 picks here. We've basically solidified ourselves in blue, and we're trying to find our next color now. Here it's, do I take a medium green card in the Omnivore, or do I take the Gravestalker, which probably has more upside for us? So I end up taking the Gravestalker here. Here we have the Flood the Engine that wheeled. Again, this is an excellent sign that blue's open, because in that pack there was River Churn Monument, Flood the Engine, and the Harrier. And so we managed to get the one other blue card that we expected back. The River Churn, okay, someone else is sitting at the table and wanting to do blue things, but we're probably not going to have too many other people fighting over our color if the Flood the Engine tabled. It's not going to be the first one that does table either. So here then we end up getting Sky Streak Engineer in our prior pick, just a good exhaust creature that's actually going to end up looking quite solid through some of our games, just as a good early blocker that turns into a flying threat later. And then we close out with another Pothole Mole, a Reef Roads, which we'll basically decide later if we want to play or not. And I think at this point, again, feeling good. Feels like blue is solid for us. We're open to finding our second color in black or green still. And so we'll see how pack 2 plays out. So here, opening 2 red rare or mythic cards, one in Chandra, one in Boomobile. Honestly, I haven't played Chandra yet. I played against it, and I've kind of been unimpressed. Honestly, it doesn't protect itself very well, and the upside of just creating vehicles or looting cards is just not that exciting. Boommobile, I think, is a much stronger card. So I'm looking at the 2 blue cards thinking, okay, well, these are quite likely to make my deck, so do I just take a blue card because it's safe, or do I speculate on the Boommobile with red as my next color? I think here, I took the Memory Guardian, but I actually think this is wrong. I think I should have taken Boommobile. It is an extremely powerful card. It is double red, which is slightly awkward, but I think it honestly will fit in as many decks for me as the Memory Guardian would. Memory Guardian's basically only going to get played in blue-black, and the Boommobile is probably only going to get played in blue-red. Maybe if I'm lucky I can find it on a splash somewhere, but it offers, I think, much more upside than the Memory Guardian. So I think I should have speculated on that. Here, looking at Mindspring Merfolk, there's a Hazard of the Dunes, there's a Wreckage Wickerfolk if we want to be on black. I just decided, I'm going to give the Merfolk a try. I haven't played with it much yet, and I figure, if I'm base blue, this gives me more card advantage to pair with my 2 Harriers. So I'm looking very solid for my card advantage engines with an Aether Siphon, a Ranger's Refueler, a Mindspring Merfolk. So my blue package now is feeling extremely strong. And so I'm looking at, okay, what might I want to pair with this? I look at the Slick Imitator. I don't think we're going to be a max speed deck. Maybe I could have taken a Broken Wings over Siphon Fuel, but at this point I was basically hoping, as you can see with me moving the Pactol Terror in, that we were going to play blue-black. So here I'm again looking at the black cards. I don't think the Wickerfolk is really going to play well in our deck. We don't have enough to sacrifice. And I'm looking, there's also the Flood the Engines, and just taking a second removal spell here probably seems like the safe bet. Again, blue is getting played regardless, so that keeps us in our colors. And then now I'm looking at, okay, I got really good green cards passed to me. Got the Aetherhive and the Elvish Refueler to push me into the Exhaust deck. And if I really look at my black cards, I haven't gotten much there, and this is a very clear signal, at least from this direction, that this deck is open. So I end up going with the Aetherhive here. I don't know if that or the Refueler is stronger, but I think the Aetherhive is safer, assuming I end up in these colors, because I've got some couple good creatures early to crew it, because it's just a crew 1. and it is a massive value engine for this deck. And so I end up going that direction ultimately. And then here I get a couple good cards. There's the Engineer, there's the Vanguard as well in this pack. But again, I'm going to go with the Engineer at this point. Just it's always making my deck. It plays well with the exhaust cards. So I'm going to keep it simple there. Here, there's a Kalorna, there's a Bounce Off, there's Tranquil Cove if we want to speculate that we're somehow going to fit white in, but we're just going to take Bounce Off. And then we could take a bit Dismal Backwater if we think there's going to be a black card, but I think the safer bet is probably just taking the Broken Wings here, get another removal spell in the deck, and solidify us into green. And so I'm feeling like we found a clear direction, another Flood the Engines tables. I am more than happy to take a whole bunch of copies of this card. I've been extremely impressed with it, and we'll see it play quite strong as well in some of the games here. So we see a Trade the Helm, there's a Tortoise, and an Armor as well. So, I take the Helm. I actually don't end up playing it. Maybe I should have played one copy just because I've got the Aether Hive to trade some stuff to the opponent with that. I probably need to get some more reps in with the card to get comfortable with it. But we are looking good. There's the Sky Ray that tables. We're not going to play it. It doesn't fit our deck, but again, feels like maybe blue-red is open as well. So here we open an extremely strong rare in the Draconautics Engineer, but we've already found our lane, and we opened it uncommon in our colors. Sky Serpent Seeker is excellent. It's just an early blocker, pulls lands out of your deck later, and then we're hovering over, okay, hopefully we can get a Hazard to the Dunes or something back around. Here we see another Flood the Engines. This would be Flood the Engines number 4. Also a Pactol Terror, but again, we're out on black at this point. There's the Highlands of note here is if we had taken that Boommobile, maybe we consider that land because it helps us get into double red. But at this point, it doesn't really look like we need that. So we'll just take the 4th Flood the Engines at this point. Now we're looking at a Fang Guardian versus another Broken Wings. I don't think the second copy of Broken Wings is super necessary in this format, particularly with us having 4 Flood the Engines already. So we're just going to take the Fang Guardian as a solid 4-mana creature for us. Then I've already got 1 Bounce Off. I already have 4 Flood the Engines. I probably don't need that. There's a Hull Drifter that I could play for card advantage, but I feel like I've got enough card advantage. And, with the exhaust deck, you should always have stuff to do with your mana as well. And so at this point, I'm going to take the Vanguard just to have another 2-mana play. I think in this deck, it's an upgrade over the Slick Imitator. So we will grab our first copy of that. And definitely this card for me felt like it overperformed in this deck. Just in the board stall state, drawing 2, 3, 4 permanents, particularly with having 4 Flood the Engines, being able to find our removal spells with it felt extremely strong. Here could have had a 5th Flood Engines, but we're going to take the first Hazard of the Dunes to go with that Keen Buccaneer that we grabbed in the pack prior. So 2 more exhaust creatures for us is an excellent find. Here, unfortunately, it's a big whiff. Nothing for us in this pack. But we do get a gift in the last pack possible in another Sky Serpent Seeker. So this was an excellent find. Helps round out our early plays now. Ramp into a whole bunch of our exhaust effects that we want to be getting to in the late game. We get another Keen Buccaneer, which means we can figure out how we're finding space for that, but is probably replacing something else that's medium quality in our deck currently. So we're looking here, nothing again in this pack for us. There's another Broken Wings there versus a Spell Pierce. but we've basically got our deck at this point. We'll take second Broken Wings, decide if we're playing it or not, but we're basically just trying to figure out, okay, what's our one cut at this point? And it ends up being, make sure I'm doing my math right, yeah, the Trade the Helm ends up coming out. I kind of look at it and decide, you know what, maybe that's too cute. We'll just keep it safe with all of our plays and hope to get value with everything else that we're doing, rather than some cutesy trade a small thing for a big thing. So yeah, this ends up being the deck. I think we did well in this draft reading the signals effectively and finding what our seat was supposed to be playing in pack 2 with that Aetherhive coming around, and I kept myself open also. I took the blue early, figured out that was going to be certainly one of our colors, and then just tried to see what else was open for us here, and so managed to pair, you know, the solid blue role player cards with some beefy green creatures in Ketradon, Hazard of the Dunes, and then value stuff with the 2 Seekers, the Aetherhive, the Vanguard. So I was quite happy with how this draft turned out, and then we'll be heading into game 1 here. Okay, game 1, we're on the draw. We need to mull to 6, but we do find Mindspring Merfolk, Refueler, Aetherhive. So we've got some good plays to help us catch up. We just have to hope that our opponent doesn't apply a ton of pressure early. They've got a Surveyor. They're going to get their engines going. So we're in a mode then of trying to figure out how we're going to stall out. So they end up playing a couple vehicles. They've got their max speed going. They're at 2 speed right now. They play a Blockbuster, unfortunately blow up our Aetherhive, which puts us in a tough position now. And I'm basically in the mode of, do I block this turn or not to keep them off? They crew. There's no point blocking at this point. And so now I'm basically hoping that I can have a blowout turn with the Fang Guardian to try and catch up on board. So they decide that they're going to come in, try and get to max speed. And I run out the Fang Guardian pre-blocks because I want to make sure that I can put it in front of one of their creatures. So I'll make the Merfolk 3/3, put that in front of their 2/2, trade with their Blockbuster. They do end up having a trick to save the Surveyor and kill my Merfolk, but I think this is a fine trade for me. It basically ends up being 2 for 2 and keeps them off of max speed. And then they don't have a follow-up play. They've got 1 card in hand, and I've got a Ketradon to follow that up. And so basically, I slam the Ketradon, I pressure them, and that ends up being game 1 because they just can't find enough gas to get them back in. So a good start. Heading into game 2 here. Again, needing to mulligan. I had 1 color in my opener and just nothing playable. So here I'm looking, probably just keeping the 1/2/3 rather than the Fang Guardian here. Unfortunately, you know, I can't play the Merfolk on 1, but they have a slow start also. The Mutant Surveyor is their first play, so I managed to get out the Merfolk, the Engineer, and the Aetherhive without running into any trouble. They do kill the Aetherhive, and then they're going to get in with the Surveyor. Fortunately, I have to let them get their speed up, but I think in this position it's fine because I've got the Harrier in my hand as well, so I'll be able to slow them down after the fact. So now I'm in the mode of trying to figure out, okay, am I playing a Harrier this turn, or am I buffing up the Engineer or drawing cards with the Merfolk? And so I decide, you know what, I'm going to go for card draw, fill up my hand, pressure with the Flyer, and Harrier the following turn. They do play a Sloth. I can slow it down, put them back down to 2 speed. They're now looking at their Mutant Surveyor, trying to figure out, you know, how they're going to get in against my Spike Shell Harrier and my Merfolk. I've also got a Flood the Engine in the hand to deal with their Sloth. They end up Gallant Striking. I'm totally fine trading with that because I know I've got some bigger threats. Interestingly, they pump pre-combat here, just kind of showing their hand. At this point, I'm debating, do I just block to keep them off? And so I believe in that position I did, but now I'm just staring down. Too much pressure. I've drawn nothing but lands. And at this point, unfortunately, this game is over. So I think this was one where it's just I lost to the flood. No pun intended with all the flood engines, but there wasn't much else I could have done there. So game 3, solid enough keep. Got both my colors. Got a early play in the Merfolk and a pair of Harriers to slow them down. They do have quite an aggressive start. They get up to 3 speed here. They've got a wide board, but I do manage to get the Aether Hive down, and it ends up sticking on the board and becomes a massive problem. 3-5 stat line is huge against them. They have no good way to deal with it. They're going to get in, try and get up to max speed. I won't be able to stop them here, but I do have the Harrier next turn to take them off of it again. And so they get in, I'll eat something with the Aether Hive, and then fight them with the Harrier. And so basically what I do then is fight them off with that, and then I end up actually activating the Sky Serpent that turn instead, and then they decide they're going to get aggressive here with the Nesting Bot. Kind of an odd attack. I'll take a drain there, but at this point I can just go Harrier, keep them off max speed, and game's over. So another smooth one there. It's not the last black-white deck we'll play, and the Flood the Engines actually end up looking super strong against that deck. So here we'll do keep. We got both of our colors. We've got 2 different 2-drops we can lead off on in here as well. So I'll lead with the Engineer, try and keep the Sky Serpent Seeker safe, which ends up actually being pertinent here because they do end up trying to kill it. And I decide that I've got a Ketradon in hand. I'm going to save this with a bounce off and protect my Sky Serpent because I want to pull the lands out of the deck and enable the Ketradon, enable the Sky Streak Engineer exhaust. And I'm not going to be taking any damage off the diversion unit here anyway, since I've got the Sky Streak Engineer in play. So save it there, end up using it to produce a ton of mana, pull lands out of my deck. I've now got a Ketradon in play. They've gone wide, notably, but they just can't get through my creatures. And so at this point I decide, they've only got 3 lands in play. I'm going to be able to generate threats a lot faster than they will, and so I'm more than happy trading my Ketradon for 3 creatures, getting in for 3 damage, and redeveloping the board first. And so that's exactly what I end up doing. Can follow up with a Buccaneer and a Sky Seeker activation, and then finally play the Harrier, bounce something. I end up finding a Hazard of the Dunes. Like, they get stuck on mana, and the amount of pressure that I can apply with the green creatures is just too much for them at that point. So next game here, debating the mulligan. I've only got one of my colors, but the Buccaneer does help us find green with an activation of exhaust. So I do decide to keep the 7. We're also on the draw, so we've got a few chances to find forest, and we end up finding it right at the right time. Get in with the Buccaneer. I can activate to double trade if they decide they want to offer that, but otherwise I can just slam a Hazard of the Dunes, and assuming they don't have removal for it, they're going to have a hard time getting their creatures through. So they make a misplay here, which is unfortunate for them, but we just end up eating their 3/3 flyer, and I think at this point the game is then over. They can't really come back from that, and I can just tempo them out with the Spike Shell Harrier and close out the game. So looking solid so far. I think the note for me is this deck did quite well in being able to turn the corner and go from being quite defensive in the first few turns of the game to the aggressor with the spike shell harriers extremely efficiently. And so I think that's kind of my lesson here is, Harrier, obviously an excellent card, no surprise there. Feels like it's the natural fit in the artifacts deck, but I think honestly, this is the note that it can play well anywhere. So here, I played some early creatures to try and trade with the Catalyzer. They end up killing all of them, so I figure, I've got 2 Flood the Engines in my hand. Let's just make sure that we're going to keep them off of max speed. So I decided to Flood the Engines, Catalyzer. They play a Pride of the Road, Flood the Engines, that Pride of the Road, get another creature out as a blocker, and then I could just play Ketradon the following turn. So they do play a Sloth. I find another Flood the Engines, though, for that. And I think this is one mistake that I made very obviously here, which was considering how much success I've had with the Sloth, I forgot about considering that saddling the Sloth means they can untap all their creatures, which includes the creatures that are tapped down with the Flood the Engines. So they end up doing that here. They untap, and I go, oh crap. I still think I'm in okay position. I'm at 18 life. I can take a hit, but they've now unlocked blockers. Thankfully, even at max speed, the Flood the Engines shuts off the abilities. And so then I Flood the Engines afterwards on the Sloth. They've got the Pride of the Road, but it's not giving anything double strike. And at this point, they decide, that's enough. They can't get through my big creatures. I've got another Flood the Engine in hand. So they bow out of that one. So 5-1, looking to rattle off 2 more wins here. This opener, Ketradon to cycle, Beast Rider Vanguard early, and then, assuming we find a blue source, we've got 1 Harrier to bounce. We need a second blue to activate the Merfolk, but I think this is fine enough keep. Of course, we find a Forest off the top, but what can you do with that? So we'll lead on the Vanguard, see where this takes us in the mid game. Basically, they end up killing my creature, shutting down another one with the Flood the Engines. And I'm kind of in the mode now of, okay, do I slam a Ketradon? And I figure, they've got 1 blue open here. If they bounce it, I've gained life to buy me another turn. And they're low on mana. I've hit all my land drops. They've missed some. So now I'm figuring, I don't think that taking 4 damage is the end of the world there, but I'll follow up at this point with the Refueler in case they've got the counterspell. They don't end up having it. They don't find more lands, and the 6/6 and 4/4 end up being enough pressure to close out this game as well. So a couple wins where our opponent stumbled, but again, I think that kind of shows if you have a deck that can turn the corner quickly enough, that's quite valuable in this format where a lot of people are still doing slow things, and if you've got enough big creatures, then you can get under them when they stumble. Here, another black-white deck, very aggressive, Embalmed Descendant to Bulwark Ox, staring down again 4 creatures on turn 4. They're about to get max speed, and then they follow up with another Ascendant. And so now I'm in a tough position. They're empty grip, thankfully, but this is where I'm going to be leaning hard on Flood the Engines. I'm at 9, so I need to shut down the Embalmed Descendants. So that last line of text on the Flood the Engines, where the enchanted permanent loses all abilities, ends up being super relevant here because it shuts off completely those Ascendants. They don't get the Blood Artist style triggers anymore. And so I don't need to worry about blocking. I can block effectively and not take the extra chip damage that would otherwise come with it. So we get to a wide board state. They get aggressive with the Ox. They've got a daring mechanic to put counters on it, but I figure, I have to get this thing off the board. It's the biggest threat to me at this point. I'm just going to throw everything in front of it, and if they've got anything weird, I can play Fang Guardian. So I end up doing that just because I decide, I want to save my Hazard of the Dunes. I'll let them kill my flyer. here instead of the hazard. So they end up taking that. But now I'm feeling good. I've got their best creature off the board. I'm just staring down, a bunch of vanilla creatures effectively. They do end up going wide. They also get a Sloth. Unfortunately, I don't have time to react with this one because they have a Amonkhet Raceway to give it haste. So they can untap the Ascendants. But again, the Ascendants are without their abilities. So they're just untapping 1/2s at this point. I'm not too scared of that. They'll get one attack in with the Sloth. I'm at 12 here, so I have to be conscious of my life total. But I end up activating Vanguard, end up activating Buccaneer. I end up finding a bounce off, so I can go for a block bounce off play, so I don't even take a hit from the Sloth. And then I can flood the engines on the Sloth the following turn if they just end up replaying it. So I go for the block here, I bounce it off, and they don't have any answer, and so end up being able to close out the game because all their little stuff is just shut down. So again, I think this is where the flood the engines, some other versions of that effect would typically just be the tap, but abilities would remain active. That extra line end up being super relevant in a couple of my games here. And so I think this is a card that people are passing much too late. They need to be prioritizing this if you're in blue. And so I was extremely happy with the Flood the Engines in this one. The other cards, no surprise, the Simic Signpost uncommons were excellent. The 2 Spikeshell Harriers were fantastic. All the green creatures played out well. I'd say the overperformer to my expectations was the Beast Rider Vanguard, but just quite happy with the shell in general, I'd say. It's definitely an archetype that I'm going to keep my eye out for because it feels like it strikes the balance between threats and interaction.